Hello, folks. My name is Rob Machado, and I'm visiting with the folks at Aviation Podcast. And it's a pleasure to be here with you folks today. And I'm looking forward to the chat we're going to have.
Hey guys, welcome to the History of Aviation Podcast. I'm Derrick Beeler, and we got a really exciting one here for you on episode 80.
It's a
Shae,
big deal.
it is a big deal. I mean, me and you and Julian got to sit down with none other than who?
Rod Machado. He is, I honestly, and I called it out during the podcast, I didn't know the name or the face. And, but you really do know the voice. If you've played Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 and Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024, and I think a couple others in the past. Like he called it out in the podcast, but it is so surreal talking to somebody who you know from a thing that you paid money for. Right? Like I went to work, I earned money, I paid for this thing, and lo and behold, there he is. He's in the thing that I just paid for. So this episode is going to be absolutely insanely cool. I can't wait for you guys to hear it.
Yeah, and legendary flight instructor, as we just said, voice of Flight Simulator X, and let's get into it. So this is the History of Aviation Podcast, episode 80, with myself, Derrick Beeler, our producer, Shae Jones, Julien Martinson, with Mr. Rob Machado.
There we go.
Excellent. Well, guys,
That
I'm
way.
happy to be here. So,
Yeah.
How do you
Yeah,
want to
we're-
start?
And it's so, and I didn't even realize he had, and I'm sure we'll get into this here in just a minute, but he had, when Derrick had told me that you were coming here, quite honestly, and this is not a jab, I promise, I didn't recognize the name. And then when he gave me
Many
a
people don't.
right? And so once I realized because he gave me a couple of videos to go look at, and as soon as I heard it, I was like, I couldn't put it together, but I knew your voice. I didn't know your face and I didn't know your name, but I was like, I know the voice. And then I still don't remember which one it is specifically, but it was one of the flight simulator games.
Yeah, if you ever used the Microsoft Flight Simulator 2000, well, actually, I think it was 1998, 2000, 2004, 2008, and Microsoft X. In the 2000 version and on up, they had flight lessons for
That's what
Microsoft
it
Flight
was.
Simulator. And so I was the
Yeah.
instructor on I was the guy who narrated the voice and actually wrote the lessons and conducted the lessons. And there's a kind of a strange story about that if you want to hear it. It's
Oh,
Absolutely.
please. I would love to.
aviation history. Chuck Yeager was the original instructor on that back in, I think, 1998. And of course, the good general, a man of many talents and definite bravery. But he was the first time I listened to him narrate a lesson. You had to make sure that you did well. Because if you didn't, Chuck Yeager would say something. It's been such a long time. He would say something like, "Well, Pard, it's clear that you weren't meant to be in aviation. So I recommend if you still want to stay in aviation, get a job in aviation waste management and don't waste your time taking flying lessons on Microsoft Flight Simulator." So I talked to Bruce Williams, who is running the program at Microsoft, and I said, Chuck Yeager's, amazing guy. The problem is he's scaring people out of aviation. He's
Yeah.
intimidating them, and not literally, but not literally either. Certainly figuratively, but I could see people cowering, going, "Oh my God, I'm going to get my application for aviation waste management, and that way I can say I still work with airplanes, but not
Exactly.
in the best capacity." So anyway, so I designed the lessons and did the voice, and it was a wonderful thing to do. I had such a great time doing that. So that's probably, Shae, where you heard that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of these days we're gonna have to like have you walk me through how to actually start, fly through, and finish. the one of those tutorials. I do like going
Well,
through
that's
those.
assuming you don't want the job in aviation waste management. They're
No,
still
like
open.
if I was
Exactly.
gonna do something like, because I've done my fair share. Like I've thrown bags into the airplane. I've helped passengers into the airplane. I've guided the plane to stop from the runway. I've done all of that, and I almost went into um, stewardship, but as I was looking through going to be a pilot, this is a lot. There's way too much that, in my mind, in the moment when I was doing it, was way too much to it for my brain to kind of grasp it. Plus,
Oh,
I was a little bit young and not.
completely understand. Completely understand.
Yeah.
Assuming you still have the ambition to do that, which I suspect you might, um, consider this, that almost everybody that begins pilot training is overwhelmed by the apparent uh, expanse of skills that you need in order to be able to learn how to fly an airplane. And whenever a student says that to me, I always say to them that, I think of the most complex thing that you've learned. And everybody has something complex that they've learned. Somebody standing in the outside would look at that and they would think, there's not a way in the world I'd be able to
Right.
do that. And yet, in reality, it's that old adage of eating an elephant one bite at a time. Sometimes some of the best wisdom is contained in adages that are, thousands of years old. Although I don't know if
Right.
there was actually time we ate an elephant, maybe,
Right.
Right.
Maybe if you go
but
back far
but
enough, maybe.
make a heck of a barbecue. Uh,
Exactly.
Hmm.
Nothing like trunk meat. Anyway,
Exactly.
the
Gives new
the
meaning to the term, to bring up the elephant in the room.
Yes, it
exactly.
does. Yeah.
So, and once if you have a good instructor, though, it changes everything. That's why I
Right.
tell people, the most important thing when it comes to learning to fly is it's an old Chinese saying, and it actually sounds better in the original Mandarin. But since I don't know Mandarin, I will tell it to you in English, and that is that it's better to look for an instructor for 3 years than a good instructor for 3 years than to spend even 3 minutes with a bad one.
Right.
And
Right.
I don't know of any adage that's more true than that.
Yeah.
So that should be your motivational guide when it comes to any kind of training, but in particular aviation training. Because think about it, I could put you in an airplane and do what some instructors have done. Certainly not all instructors, but there are a few real bad apples out there. I could take you up and I would say something like, well, I would precede it by saying, hey, want to see something neat? Now, the moment somebody says something
Yeah,
like
that
that,
just
you
takes
reach
you out
over,
of
you
that
tighten
moment.
up your
Yeah.
seatbelt, you put all those other connections in, assuming you have a 5 or 25-point seatbelt harness, because you're going to see something that may not be all that neat for you. And you end up, the instructor ends up doing some crazy maneuver. It scares the heck out of you. And you know what? That person has ruined aviation for you for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Think about that. That
Right.
one action
Yep.
makes it almost impossible for you to enjoy aviation again. Because once
Right.
fear is encoded deep within the R complex of our brain, it is very hard to get over.
It is.
And that I mean, there's a good reason for having that type of fear that immobilizes you in some instances, such as fear of heights. You don't get close to a cliff because obviously the results would be dangerous if you fell off the cliff. Well, fear is hard to get rid of, and this is not purposeful fear in an airplane because airplane flying is, in my opinion, very, very safe as long as you do it right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's my opinion. You got to do it
Yeah.
right,
I
though.
love flying. I think it's so fun.
Yeah. Do you love flying on an airliner, Shae?
I do. I do. I have. I've had the opportunity to fly, both in a really big airplane um, that would go overseas, and then I've also had the opportunity to fly in, smaller planes, still good sized plane, obviously that goes, you know, in the United States. So, and
Mhm.
then I also have had the pleasure of flying in a seaplane, and that one was
Oh,
a little bit more
excellent.
bumpy, but it was still really cool to
Well,
be able to
seaplanes
do.
flying is very good, especially if you get thirsty during flight.
Right,
That really helps.
exactly. Hey,
Now,
go on
now,
down there real fast for me.
yeah, exactly. Ask me if I like flying on an airliner.
Do you like flying on an airliner?
I'm glad you asked, Shay. No, I do not fly it on an airliner. And that's typical with most people who fly general aviation airplanes. Let me rephrase that. It's typical for most instructors that build up a lot of flight time and they're always in control because when I'm on an airliner, I'm obviously not in control.
Got it.
And so that makes me feel uncomfortable. I was sitting on an airliner one time with my laptop open, running Microsoft Flight Simulator, and I'm sitting near the window because that's where I like to sit. And I have Microsoft Flight Sim open, and I'm following the route that we're flying on Microsoft Flight Sim. And I've got my little joystick and what have you, and I can see the person looking over at me, thinking, "What are you doing?" I mean, because he sees that I've got instruments and it's the same. It's a jet aircraft. He says, What are you doing?" I says, I'm just practicing in case I have to take over the airplane, which is something I always think about, just in case the captain had the fish. Because
Exactly.
yeah, I always
Exactly.
yell out, make sure the captain doesn't get the fish. So let the people in back get the fish, which is typically a cold fish head, based on the meals that I've had before I'm flying.
There you go.
I'd rather, airlines are great, they're very safe, but I'd rather fly my own small airplane anywhere
Yeah.
I go. And
Yeah.
that's a fact.
That is awesome. Well, thank you for that. That's amazing.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what Derrick does and Julian does. I know Shae, you work obviously with computers and
Yeah.
Microsoft Teams, whatever. But what about Derrick? What do you
Yeah.
do,
Go ahead,
Derrick?
Derek. Oh, are you muted? He might be muted. There we
Ah,
go. I'm not sure.
oh,
Well, let's go
hopefully
to
not for the rest of his life.
right now. No, not at all. Well, let's move it over to Julian. How about you?
Okay, Julian.
Thank you so much for reaching out to me. Aviation has been a lifelong passion for me. I started out as a flight attendant, and just like you, my preference is to be active in the cabin, and I also don't like sitting still too long,
Mhm.
because I'm like, and when is that meal service coming? Um, but
Yeah, the
I
cold fish head.
recently did my studies in aviation management at Georgian College, and then I did my master's studies in aviation management at Griffith University with my thesis on global pilot supply and demand. So, why is there a pilot shortage, and what are we doing to attract, train, and retain pilots and
Oh,
retain that skill force,
very interesting.
and retain that talent? Because, as you know, flying the plane is one thing, but maintaining your competitive advantage globally is still another question. And so these are some of the topics that I discussed in my thesis. And so it's a little bit from a different perspective than from the cockpit. It's from a workforce planning perspective.
Well, excellent. That's very interesting. What is the biggest challenge with retaining pilots that you talked about in your thesis?
So in Canada last summer, Sunwing had to cancel their southern destinations out of Saskatchewan because of a lack of pilots. And so raised my question. So why are there not enough pilots? Because it's a prestigious career and it pays well, and it's
Indeed.
got many advantages. So the issue is that the financial barriers to get into applying for a pilot, and the young people now after September 11th perceive pilot careers much differently than the older generation. The older generation perceived pilots as um, um, conquerors of the sky and explorers and daredevils, but the newer generation, they may perceive it as like, oh, that's the occupation that gets hit by COVID, and
Yes,
they may
yes.
lose their jobs
Yeah.
because of COVID. And so there's a little bit of that lingering stigma that occupation has. So, and it's, there's limited access to training programs in Canada and the United States. And then a lot of young people who are not financially attached, um, or don't have families, they may be lured overseas to more lucrative positions with China and the Middle East offering better compensation,
Hmm.
work lifestyle balance. And for a young person that's got lots of student loans to pay, and somebody's waving a bigger paycheck over there in the Middle East, they
Sure.
just go. And if you don't have any family attachments, then you just pack up your bags and off you go. For the older pilots who are financially secure, um, it might be a little bit more difficult. So during my
Yes.
days with Air Canada, I would get to sit in the cockpit and I chat with the pilots, and the pilots sometimes it came up in conversation. They're like, well, I could fly in the States and earn more money, but my wife doesn't want to
Mhm.
because of the kids and the pool and
Sure.
yada yada. And so because of family um, commitments and stability, they don't pursue more lucrative positions because of their seniority and stuff like that. But younger
Right.
people don't think like that. They're just like, oh, in Asia they've got better pay. Off I go. And so they pack up their bags and they leave. And so it
Yeah.
leaves a void in the workforce. And so we train people thinking that they're going to stay, and then 6 months later they're bye-bye.
Yeah, well,
And
that's obviously not good for the company, but very interesting. And you said something that I had not thought about before. First of all, let me tell you, as a flight attendant, uh, if based on the flight attendants that I have known, you probably have earned your honorary master's degree in behavioral psychology. Because I've seen flight attendants have unbelievable control, crowd control with passengers, and it was always an interesting thing to watch. But your point about COVID and the diminishment and the shutdown of all the major airlines for a length of time and the diminishment of hiring is an interesting thing because here you have a generation of pilots all of a sudden seeing, hey, you can lose your airline job if you get furloughed, but you can
Right.
also lose it because of the vicissitudes of biological infection. In other words, the pandemic, COVID-19.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that kind of works on the brain. And
Mm-mm.
the all the business stats say that within the next 20 years, we'll need over 200,000 pilots. And that hasn't changed. And when the economy's good, aviation goes up. When the economy's bad, aviation goes down. Probably one of the most um, reliable statistic. And as long as you can have a good economy, which I think we're going to have, then you're in great shape. But that is good. Derek, did you get your microphone back? Are you back on?
I believe I did.
I
Yeah,
believe.
Yeah,
Hey, there he
I can hear.
is. Very
He's
good.
he's using words now. Excellent.
I am
There we go.
using words now. Yeah, so I am Derrick Beeler, and I am the creator and host of this TV show of this podcast. But my normal job I cannot disclose publicly.
Oh,
Ooh.
I see. Secret agent. I
Oh
got it.
no,
Yeah.
no, far, very
I got you,
far
brother.
from it. But their policies are
Well, it's
definitely
that or a hitman, one of the two.
Yeah.
So
Well, yeah. 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 Exactly.
I, I got. Well, here I have a question for you. Then this is something that interests me too. And why did you start your podcast? What was the reason for it?
I found a lot of aviation podcasts, but I never could find any history of aviation podcasts.
Ah,
When you take the history of aviation podcast, you can go anywhere you want.
oh, so true.
there's a lot of podcasts out there about airline pilots. There's a podcast out there about uh, there's flight simulator podcast as well as
That was your last podcast, by the way, I
Instructor.
think.
Yeah, we did the
Yeah.
last one on flight sims,
Very good.
and
There he is. He's got
there
it.
was
Yeah.
there
He's
wasn't
listening.
much. Oh yeah, he's listening. That's good. And there
Yeah.
wasn't there. There's just not a lot of. I feel that aviation history is something that needs to be preserved, and I don't
Yeah.
think there's a lot of preserving that out there.
Well, I've actually mentioned this in a lot of the speaking programs I've done over the years, and I used to tell people that a lot of young people don't know that much about aviation history. In fact, if you ask most young people, you say, name a famous aviation event that occurred in December many years ago, many people will say, well, that's when the Wright brothers bombed Pearl Harbor. And I'm pretty sure that's not correct. So then you ask them, okay, name two men that made it possible for man to fly. And they will say Ernest and Julio Gallo. And that's also not true, to the best of
Right.
my knowledge. But I've always found that fascinating. And I used to remind people that I think it was in 1909, a gentleman by the name of Elmo Pickerill made the first radio transmission from an airplane. I found this, a Curtis Pusher, I think the airplane was. So he was up in a Curtis Pusher, brought a radio with him. I don't know how he got the thing up there. And nobody knows exactly what he said, but I suspect his initial words or the initial words in his first transmission were help and how do I get down? And I don't know if that's true or not, but and so when you look at how quickly aviation evolved from 1903, the first 120-foot flight into a long stretch of history, it really is fascinating because we learned to fly IFR essentially by having, in other words, under instrument flight rules, by having people follow roads initially and then telephone poles, and until, of course, the telephone pole or the road went into a tunnel. And that's where people invented the term tunnel vision, because that's a very dangerous thing. If you're in the clouds under low visibility and you fly into a tunnel, I would not recommend that. And the way that people would shoot an instrument approach, and this always fascinated me, they would light a fire, a big bonfire on the end of the runway. And a pilot could actually fly under low visibility conditions if he knew the runway heading and could spy the light of the bonfire through the clouds. And so what you would do is you would line up on your compass with the runway heading and make sure that the fire was right in front of you. And that way you're flying a bearing right to the runway. And you had some notes as to where the trees were and how low you could go. And then you'd land on the runway and hopefully, get the brakes applied before you run off the end of the runway into the bonfire, which, by the way, had happened a couple of times, and thus the genesis of the term "he landed hot." So I don't know if that's technically true or not, but it could be. And so and then one final story, we had VORs that, and this amazed me. We had ADF, of course, as you know, automatic direction finder, which many people think that's the instructor in the right seat. It's not. Sometimes it is. But the automatic direction finder became the high art of navigating on instruments. And so few people know how to use that today. Of course, there was a 4-course radio range, which didn't in no way was associated with a 4-course meal in flight, because there's never been a 4-course meal in flight after the 1960s. But anyway, what happens is the FAA invented the VOR, very high frequency omnidirectional radio range, and it became prevalent in the early 1950s. And the FAA actually said on their literature, they actually said this, I couldn't make it up. I'm saving all the stuff I'm going to make up for the very end of your show.
That's the way to do it.
The FAA said, now that we have VOR, no one will ever get lost again. That's in the literature.
Wow.
Not only did people get lost to a place, they were now getting lost from a place. So they got lost in 2 dimensions, 3 if you consider the ambiguity indicator. So, and now we have GPS, of course, and with GPS, if you get lost, you were really lost.
Right.
The best,
yeah. You probably never should have taken off.
Yeah, probably not. I would land in a field and just sell the airplane and use the money to buy a new identity.
Right, exactly.
Very embarrassing to return to the home airport. So anyway, you want history? There's a little bit of history.
That's amazing.
Some of it's true, but yeah, all of it's true, except for the selling the airplane if you get lost with GPS.
This is true.
And by the way, this is iced tea.
Yeah, just very good.
I honor that rule, 8 hours from bottle to mic.
There you go.
Where's it 8 feet from bottle to mic? I don't
believe it's 8 feet. I'm pretty sure.
It's 8 feet.
So what inspired you, Rod, to become a pilot in the very beginning?
That is an excellent question, Derrick. And again, it's a strange thing. I talk about that a lot because it's amazing how people are similarly inspired by the same thing. Over the years, and I've had the just an incredible fortune to speak in all 50 states and in many countries in European countries over the last 50 years, 45, 50 years. And actually, probably since I was started 23, actually. So that would be 52 years ago. But well, no, that would be 50 years ago, 52. So the thing that I found interesting in those seminars that I've done, I asked people the same question. I said, how many people always wanted to fly versus how many people wanted to fly to use an airplane for a living? 96, 97% of the people always wanted to fly. There was this sort of Jungian archetype within them that compelled them to always think about airplanes, look at airplanes, get excited about airplanes. And even when I was 3 years old or 2.5 years old, I hear an airplane fly over and I would run out. I would go out and I go, airplane, airplane. And sometimes I forgot to put my pants on. And that's, my mom would say, get back in here, put your pants on. And of course, I do the same thing nowadays. I go, airplane, but I do put my pants on before I go up most of the time. Anyway, so that is something that's a direct answer to your question. It was built into my biological construct, and I even have a picture of me 3 years old holding a metallic airplane, walking on the grass out in front of the house. The parents had locked me out of the house, so I was out there with my airplane, and pretty excited about that. So, how about you? What inspired you to learn to fly? Derrick? Oh, Derrick lost his words again.
All right.
Oh, there he goes.
Well, you are back.
I don't know what is going on here, but yeah, one of the big things for me was getting to be around it at a young age, 13, 14,
Nice.
because of a friend of mine who is now a CFI, and his dad was a Navy pilot. So I really got lucky in the sense that I was around it at a young age, and I was around people that were flight instructors and whatnot. So I was able to really afford it that way.
Yes, very, very good. And it's amazing. Young people have, I think, a lot more access to airplanes than they might be aware. Older folks, folks that are, 30, 40s, not old folks, those are older folks compared to young folks. They love taking people flying. The EAA has the Young Eagles program. It's pretty hard not to find somebody to give you an airplane ride, and with that, maybe give you a little instruction. And it's pretty hard to get on an airport nowadays unless you have Secret Service high Mount Tamalpais security credentials. You need that kind of access, except for the really small airports. Fortunately, we still have quite a few of those around where you can walk up to a pilot on the airport, talk and trade stories, and that's a great thing. But the access is available. It's out there. I'm amazed at how many scholarships are available for young people that weren't there 15 years ago. And 15 years ago, I would tell people, listen, if you want to learn to fly, here's what you have to do. This sounds like tough love, but this is what you have to do. Get 2 jobs. Get a job after, if you're already working, then get another job that is just a few hours per week, maybe 10, maybe 20, and use that money, put it away to learn, for flying lessons, assuming that you and your family are in agreement with that. And for a young person, you're in high school, get a job and put the money away for flight training. And that's something that people can still do. But if you are tenacious and you apply for scholarships, it's quite possible you can get one given the plethora of scholarships that are available nowadays. I couldn't say that 15 years ago. I could say it today.
Yeah, we just had a couple of podcasts ago, we just had a big shout out to Catherine Jett, she took her Young Eagles flight a year prior to the event we was at. And then at this year's event, she announced that she got her private pilot's license.
That's fantastic. That is very good, very encouraging. And by the way, you don't have to learn to fly an airplane first. You can learn to fly a glider, which can be less expensive than learning to fly an airplane. And besides, you can solo a glider at 14 years old. You can also solo a balloon at 14 years old, but that's not for everybody. Soloing a glider at 14 years old, if you can do that, that's pretty dang impressive because airplanes have engines, as I'm sure you are well aware of. And so you can always find your way back to the airport, assuming you don't get lost.
Yeah, absolutely.
Assuming you're not using
Yeah.
VOR. They get lost all the
Right.
time. No, that's not true. I'm just kidding. Just head for the bonfire. And but in a
Exactly.
glider, you got to get back to the airport without your engine. Imagine that, taking off without an engine, and you have to find your way back. Now, here's an interesting thing about, well, everything in aviation is interesting to me. In glider flying, you can solo a glider at 14 years old. Now, but you have to be 16 years old to solo an airplane. So you can actually start earlier. You still need to be
Right.
older to get to get the license, but at 14 years old, you can solo a glider. And the reason is, and I always thought this was very interesting, it was actually very wise of the FAA when they wrote this rule back in the 1950s, is glider flying is a communal activity. So you're always within earshot pretty much of adult. And that translates into adult supervision. So in essence, you're always under the watchful eye of an adult, not in an airplane, not always, because the instructor you're flying with may be the same age as you, 18 years old in this case. Or maybe very close to your age, but with a communal activity, 3 or 4 adults around, you got the tow pilot, you got the instructor, and then you have other folks. Glider pilots tend to be a more, let's say, social group. They like to hang around, talk, and point fun at the different color schemes and what have you. So it's probably one of the overlooked benefits of aviation that most people don't think of. And one more, you can also train for the sport pilot certificate too, flying a light sport aircraft, which means you can cut, if you have a good instructor and you use a flight simulator to develop your stick and rudder skills, you can probably cut the fly time down to a minimum. Well, technically, you can get a private pilot sport license at 20 hours versus the minimum of 40. People typically tend to take longer, of course, but you
That's
can
cool.
do the sport. The option is available to you there. So.
Man, that was awesome.
Dude, I freaking love that guy. We need to have him on again, and I can't. It was one of those moments in life where you're like, it's almost like starstruck, but I didn't really realize. But he doesn't come off in a negative way. He's just super cool, super chill. He just seems like you could just talk to him. Like you could just talk to him on the street, and there he is. And how you doing? I'm doing great. Like you just have a full conversation, which we just kind of did there. So that was amazing.
Yeah, and we're going to have him on again here real soon for part 2 of that interview. And jumping into some stuff here, Shae, for the History of Aviation Podcast, we've got the website at www.hoapod.com. That will lead you to the store.
Yep.
Where
Episodes,
you can,
everything, you name it.
Everything's right there, and it's really, wouldn't you say it's the one-stop shop for the History of Aviation Podcast?
It is absolutely, and it's getting better and better and updated every single day. Very, very useful. So we really want to use that one for listening and watching to some of the podcasts. Although we had been talking about the Patreon, so we want to get that going because we started it and kind of let it slide by because we were trying to get all the other stuff set up. It's easy for life to kind of pass you by there, but we're probably going to be getting that going again soon. But we want to get people to the website to listen to everything, to buy everything. That's where you guys are going to help us be supported because it takes a lot to do the things that we do. We want to be able to travel eventually. We want to come out to your neck of the woods and actually go to your events and say, hey, did you go to this event? The History of Aviation Podcast was there, and I got to be on their show, or they asked me a question about this thing, or whatever, whatever the situation is. But that's our ultimate goal. Yeah. Anything else on the website that I wasn't thinking of?
No, you covered it all. And if you're listening to this podcast, or if you have listened to this podcast, you can always go to YouTube, Twitter. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. All of our short clips there. We post short clips of the podcast, and some of the great things that Rod Machado hit on today will be, you can find the actual visual of that on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. We also post there frequently, and yeah, go over there. Go to our YouTube channel. We got a lot of content there. We've got some events we've been to, and speaking of events, September's not too far to mention this. I'll be headed up to Morristown.
It's coming.
I'll be headed up to Morristown, Tennessee, to the annual fly-in there. So we're going to get some video from that, and we're going to talk to some people. It's going to be a good time, and you can find all of those links down below, including Shae, Rod's link to his website.
Yes, I will make sure that it pops up on the video as well. But right here, just so you have it, it's rodmachado.com. Very easy. Go ahead.
Go ahead and give a spelling out for that as well.
The spelling. All right. So it is ROD, M as in Michael, A as in Alpha, C as in Charlie, H as in, help me out, Derrick.
Hotel,
A as in Alpha, D as in Delta, O as in Oscar.com. Thank you. Some of them I'm learning. I'm going to get it, people, with your help. You're going to help me get it. So www.rodmachado.com.
Well, I will say that is a wrap. Enjoyed it, Shae. So for Julien Martinson, Shae Jones producing, Rod Machado guest, I'm Derrick Beeler. Thanks for listening to History of Aviation Podcast.